would love to see these opportunities that may exist with Japan.
Yes, thank you for mentioning. So the Japan is a late comer for 5G, and definitely compared with the China. And there are some other the focuses coming out, but in reality, as a whole ecosystem, Japan focuses the like elderly or some economic activities after World War II, not the security or national security area. On the other hand, US has very strong that the DoD, the internet, for instance, started from DoD. So the but by nation, it's different focuses for the technology adoption for the commercial use. In the US-Japan perspective, it's complementary in a sense. Now I recognize, as I mentioned, the local 5G effort, meaning adapting for the factory automation because of the fact that less workforce are recognized in Japan, less younger people, more elderly people, and the farmers, they need workers. Maybe not nursing home, they need to help those robotics and 5G using as the precise kind of help or quasi-human type going forward. So those technology focus in Japan is a very good one. But in terms of the mindset of the security, mindset of how to defend, so from a historical perspective, educational perspective, kind of lacking. So it's a really complementary in the US and Japan. But certainly to get the trust relationship, as mentioned, the security clearance, which is the related to the Five Eyes relationship. The primary question you mentioned that like Huawei ban, which country and so on, and also really trusted in the national security level. Japan needs to join some level to communicate for the critical decision making. So clearly, how to get the mechanism of the security clearance, how to share in the trusted communication beyond commercial or person to person as a systematic way. And the zero trust I also mentioned should be incorporated. But here's the thing: the critical infrastructure are provided by companies like Hitachi. It's not military, but so the definition of the cooperation should be defined. For instance, the U.S.-Japan digital the agreement, digital trade agreement, has the sort of the law. However, how to get the mechanism and the technology behind the support, those needs to happen for getting the trust, not just the low level, but a technical level and a real communication level. So those are the part that I think needed to be addressed and implemented. Let me stop here.
I think that's interesting, Kazuo, because I think we have not thought about the other allies that the United States should have as they try to sort of do what you guys talked about, sort of switching to a market diversification strategy, but also trying to negotiate, I think, some of those safety measures that really will reduce, I think, the levels of national insecurities within these systems. Also, when you think about US and Japan cooperation, and I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. I didn't ask this question, and I don't know why I didn't think of it as a researcher. We are going into a new president-elect under the Biden administration, and I'm curious the extent to which you will see this new administration begin to sort of shift the tables on our dealings with Asia, particularly looking at cooperative models if China doesn't want to come to the table, and sort of, figure out ways to become much more collaborative in these networks.
Great question, and I would say, irregardless of administrations and beyond politics, I think there is an increase in consensus in U.S. policy debates on 5G about the critical importance of collaboration, trying to build partnerships with our allies and with a range of like-minded countries on 5G. And encouragingly, some of this kind of collaboration is already starting to take shape, including through the initial conference on 5G security that was hosted out of Prague, and some of the growing consensus on basic principles of 5G security. And I think the impetus for a greater convergence on these fronts comes out of a recognition of the stakes, that 5G security isn't simply a concern of data security or espionage. We're talking about the future of critical infrastructure that will be at the foundation of our societies, and for which an attack or damage could be devastating, especially if 5G starts to become more closely integrated into future smart cities, or into our transportation, into the functioning of our healthcare system and otherwise. So yeah, I think certainly I think there is likely to be a pivot, and at the very least a change in tone and priorities with the new administration. But I think that encouragingly, there already are starting to be more bilateral and multilateral conversations about about developing principles on 5G security, thinking about best practices and lessons learned. And some of these have been perhaps too abstract and not technical enough at this stage. Of sort of, for instance, general frameworks to evaluate vendors that are more likely to be risky as a result of, for instance, undue influence by a government that has likely intent and capability to exploit that, whether for espionage or attacks and disruption. But I think going forward, a recognition of the values of an open approach, of concentrating on resilience as a core principle, I think will be critical, and hopefully policymakers and technical experts in the space can continue to coordinate and work towards better understanding of what is a feasible pathway forward on these fronts. And yeah, I think definitely 5G has been highlighted as an industry of the future by the Trump administration. I think President-elect Biden certainly has highlighted the importance of innovation and investments in infrastructure. So there may be some continuity, but hopefully also a continued progression towards a more coherent approach, and also one that concentrates on and builds upon the growing consensus that there needs to be an investment in this critical infrastructure at home as well to start. And hopefully, as we also think about the global elements of the 5G marathon, so to speak, there will be opportunities to promote collaboration, not just in data security and cybersecurity or in research and development, but on providing more feasible and affordable alternatives to countries that might right now turn to Huawei or other vendors that have that fast, cheap option, regardless of their security concerns. And once there are more collaborations for investment and deployment of 5G, bringing to bear the capabilities of different companies and countries in the space, hopefully we might see going forward more of a compelling alternative presented, and more attention to the global development opportunities here as well.
That's right. Just to stay on this policy front, and then Muriel, I have a question on the technical side. And for those of you who are watching, we are going shortly to Q&A. And so I have a list of previously submitted questions, and I've got questions coming through the chat. If you have a question, please be sure to place it within the chat box on the live stream so that I can ask those questions of this very distinguished panel.